All right, welcome back, friends of G&K. Luke and I are out here because we're outstanding in our field. No, really, we're looking at alfalfa, right, Luke?
Yes, sir.
This is kind of a hot topic right now if you raise alfalfa. The question is, do you call it alfalfa or do you call it hay?
Alfalfa.
Alfalfa? So we're out here in a hay field talking about Alfalfa Weevil, potentially a problem for us this spring. So keep in mind, Alfalfa Weevil overwinters as an adult, goes through stages like most insects, which is adults, eggs, larva, pupa. We've accumulated enough heat units now that larva hatch has occurred and they're starting to build and increase. Normally we don't get too excited about it because we make first cutting before it becomes a problem. However, with the onset of early heat that we accumulated back in March, we've kind of sped the process up a little bit, and weevil feeding is actually a little bit more than what's normal at this time of year. So I want to show you a couple ways to assess your fields. Luke will pull a few stems. So tip feeding is the first logical place to look.
With weevil, yield impact decreases as the alfalfa height increases.
If you have 6-inch alfalfa, threshold for treatment is approached when you have 25% tip feeding. At 9-inch alfalfa, threshold for treatment is approached at 50% tip feeding. 12-inch alfalfa, the threshold is 75% tip feeding. So Luke pulled a couple plants, and you can assess what kind of feeding you have just to get an idea, do I have a problem or do I not have a problem? Then I would approach it by one of two ways, and we'll show you that. Yeah! Give me that sweep net. My preferred method is a sweep net. So Luke's going to demonstrate how we use a sweep net to assess larvae impact. I like to take 10 sweeps in a field that encompasses half the diameter of the sweep. Once you make your sweeps and you slowly peel that back and assess your larvae counts. So right there's one. Here's one hanging off the side, 2. So this particular sweep had about 1 larva per sweep. To me, that's actually below a threshold to worry about treatment. Generally, I like to see 2 or 3 per sweep before I'm concerned about treating my alfalfa. Now, with the heat that we have coming, the populations are going to increase, and with the rain we have coming, first cutting could be a number of days away. So you have to pay attention to your alfalfa fields and don't let them get too far away from you. They can dissect an alfalfa field pretty quick. So you want to stay abreast on what's going on and don't get behind. Let me show you a second method of scouting your fields. Luke's going to demonstrate to you the white bucket approach by using the stem count. Generally, to do that, you collect 10 stems in random places in the field, shake them in a white bucket so you can count the larvae. Typically, if we're in the 3rd to 4th instar of larvae, which generally are about a 1/2 inch long, if you have 2 to 4 per plant, that's threshold. I prefer the sweep net approach because it's very sporadic to collect them on a stem.
So based on what we've seen here, do we need to treat this field?
We don't need to treat this field, at least not yet. We're probably 10 days to 2 weeks from cutting, especially with the weather forecast the way it is. So you have to factor all that in. My guesstimation is more than likely this will have to get treated because they are building in numbers, and the forecast with warm weather is going to allow more hatch, more numbers, bigger larvae. If you have to treat, our suggestion is to use a pyrethrin insecticide. There's a number of pyrethrins available. Any pyrethrin is good. That could be Warrior, Mustang Mac, Grizzly 2, Hero, generic, they're all fine. The biggest thing you have to keep in mind is pre-harvest intervals. So some have a 3-day pre-harvest interval, some have a 7-day pre-harvest interval. So be aware of what you're using and how often you can make that baleage or make the cutting, because you do have to allow for the pre-harvest interval so you don't injure the livestock you're going to feed it to.
But you know, as always, when in doubt, give us a shout and I'll come check it out.
Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you joining us. Tune in next time for our next video.
Yield impact decreases as the size of alfalfa increases. Well, I'm ready.
You got it?
So as the size of the alfalfa increases, the amount of yield decreases.
No.
With the weevil, the size of the alfalfa increases. For 6-inch alfalfa, the threshold for tip feeding is 25%.
No.
There's got to be an easier way to say it.
Right.
Is that good and goofy?
Well, we can make something out of that. Yeah.